Hello, hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Feast Foreplay, the podcast where we're having conversations about the things to come. We're talking everything about the Festival of Embodiment and Sexual Transformation, and not just about the festival, but the incredible people that are producing and contributing to this space, making it possible, bringing their incredible offerings and skills. And today I'm feeling super excited to be sitting here with you, Lorraine, because I recognize, actually, I've been aware of your work for some time, and I know that you serve the Melbourne community really deeply and have been for a while. You've been a sexological body worker for like many years now, but I don't know much about you as an individual, your story, what work you focus on. And so I'm personally excited to actually get to know that a bit better and get to know you a bit better today. So thank you for being here and welcome to the space.
Oh, thank you, Jordan. It's so lovely to catch up with you and have this
Yeah,
chat too, because it's same. And I hear about you up there doing all the things that you're doing, and I see you everywhere, but I haven't really got a chance to chat with you much yet.
totally, totally, absolutely. So let's dive straight in. I'm starting every conversation with the same question. And that question is, what was your first experience in a group erotic learning space? And what did that experience lead to in your life in the months and years that followed?
Oh, group erotic. That would be a tantra workshop I went to in 2014. Um, that's the somatic stuff.
Hmm.
Prior to that, I was working in the sex industry, so I had maybe 17 years in the sex industry before that, and I thought
Wow.
that I was like out there, and I thought that I was open, and this workshop put me on my knees and freaked
Mm,
me out, and about halfway through I had to walk out because I was so triggered. I didn't even know what was happening to me. I was just like, what is this? Why am I feeling all these big feelings? Why is this happening to me? And I found the answers since, but at that
mm,
point I was really confused about what was going
mm.
on.
Wow, I love that. I love a representation of challenge in this because there is so many different flavors of that, that first touch point. And even hearing that you've been in the sex industry for 17 years and there could still be like a confronting experience like this. And then obviously it led to something. What do you feel like the kind of short and then more long-term impacts were that kind of popped up from that challenging but significant experience in a group space?
Well, I think what happened was that I opened up. I'd been closed
Mm,
up. Like in
mm,
order to do the work that I was doing, I had a persona and I had a character that I put on, and I would go to work. And even though I wasn't wearing anything at work, I was wearing the persona.
yeah.
Yeah, the workshop, I was wearing a lot more clothing, and
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't that intense. It was
Yeah.
quite entry level tantra workshop, I would
Mm,
say, because I was very beginner. I'd not had any experience before of that. But it was cracking me up and opening me up.
mm,
And what was in there was all kinds of stuff that I'd shoved down and I hadn't
mm,
addressed yet. Um, Trauma, lots of trauma, attachment wounding, lots of stuff
mm,
happening inside me. And moving from there as well, going to other workshops, for a little while, I felt like an outsider, like I
mm,
wasn't part of the group, like I
mm,
didn't feel like I fit in because of all these things that were unhealed inside of me.
mm, mm, mm. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really significant answer. I appreciate you sharing so openly with us. And I feel like it dovetails really well actually into our next question, which is what do you think makes doing erotic development work so important and valuable and perhaps even unique to other kinds of personal development? Because there's so much flying around in the world these days, but I've witnessed, at least in my own work in the spaces I support, a real unique flavor. And I'm curious what that feels like, what the value of it is in your mind.
Oh, there's so many ways that it's valuable. I mean,
Mm.
I often come back to what the founder of sexological bodywork, Joseph Kramer, talks about is the genital black hole. That's
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
oh, it's big, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it left such an impression on me
Mm.
because I had that. I had numbness in my genitals. Like
Mm.
I was going on stage and I was doing pretendy self-pleasure
Mm.
at work, but I wasn't feeling anything.
Mm.
And I had like 70, by the time I did sexological bodywork, I had 18 years of being numbed out, touching my own genitals and not feeling anything.
Mm. Mm.
And I think a lot of other modalities, they avoid the genitals. I remember working with someone right at the beginning of my career in sexological bodywork, and they'd been to a Vipassana retreat, And they came and had a session with me, and they were like, oh, we did all these meditations on all the parts of the body, but we didn't do the genitals and we didn't do the anus. And it was
Yeah.
like they had such great body awareness
Yeah.
everywhere and
Yeah.
then nothing in the pelvis
Yeah.
at all. And
Yeah.
it took a long time for them to reconnect with those parts. Like it took months and months of work.
Totally. I think it's so common in like the modern spiritual and personal development and embodiment kind of industry or culture to be like, yeah, it's so important to be connected to the body. And then we just skip straight over this center, like this base part of our being, this part of our being that creates life, creates pleasure. It's like, what on earth is going on? So yeah,
Yeah.
we haven't talked about that yet in this space, in these conversations I've been having. And I love that that came up with real explicit detail, because I think there's so much richness to be found in having an intentional relationship and connection with this part of ourselves, and so much more awareness to be gained. You know, it's so often it's driving people in unconscious ways because they can't feel, they can't be in intentional contact with. And so it's coming out sideways, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Hard and fast and porn and all
Yeah,
these things.
totally.
Oh,
Numbness, as you said. Yeah, it's
and
major.
it's such an intense energy as
Mm,
well.
mm,
As well
absolutely.
as doing psychological body work, I also do trauma therapy as well. And I find that weaving that in, like there's a lot of people out there who've experienced trauma, like myself, that struggled to connect with their genitals. So there's the learning around that, there's the healing around that. But then there's also, once we're comfortable with our genitals and we're doing other kinds of practices and we're doing rewiring of the brain, that erotic energy, that novelty,
Mm,
it can rewire things so
mm,
fast and so quickly. Like
mm,
if I've just done an EMDR session with someone, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, that's what that stands for, if anybody's curious. Doing some erotic work afterwards, as long as they're feeling regulated and
yeah,
grounded and
yeah,
present. We don't want to do it if we've opened up something and it's not
totally,
closed, it's not
totally.
finished. But as part of the integration, doing some erotic work,
Mm,
it can really shift patterns and move
mm,
people forward in
mm.
incredible ways.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that in my work too, where I get, you know, continually surprised and so heartened when people come to me, you know, and sometimes it's men in their 40s or 50s, and it's like they've had the same
Mm,
wiring for the same kind of erotic landscape for like 20 or 30 years, maybe even longer, you know, since they were like 14, 15 years old, pornography, masturbation, whatever it is. And then within a matter of months, like we can completely change what their reality is. And I'm like, that's incredible. Like decades worth of, you know, stuckness shifted in a matter of months. So yeah,
yeah.
really, I've seen that as well. I feel like, you know, this brings up for me, you know, what you're most passionate about. What kind of challenges and growth opportunities do you most love to support people with in your individual work?
Oh, it's for me a lot. It's a lot around trauma, a lot
Mm,
around people who are really stuck. They're having difficulties accessing their own pleasure, their own body, and often they feel like it's never going to happen, but they're going to give it a try anyway. They've come with their low expectations, um,
yeah.
and seeing the shifts and the shifts that can ripple out into other parts of their
Mm,
lives too.
mm,
Like we're not just working on
yeah.
sexuality. This is a
Yeah.
whole being. It's holistic. It changes their relationships. It changes their experience of their work. Their experience of just moving through the world. Their posture changes.
Mm,
It's just
mm.
beautiful.
Yeah, it truly is. I love that. Tell us a bit more. You know, I feel like this is a perfect moment. Tell us a bit more about your training background, about how you work with people right now in the world. Like, how can people approach you and get, you know, the wisdom and knowledge and support that you have to offer?
People can approach me through my website. That's where all my bookings are made, unless I'm seeing someone in person, then they make another one. I like to keep it digital. um, my background is, like I say, in the sex industry. So I had, before I started doing this work, I had 17, 18 years of working in the sex industry. And then I did my sexological bodywork training in 2015. And I just got so excited. I was just like, give me all the training. I got cracked up and I started healing my own trauma. From there, I did DJ's embodied counseling workshop, sorry, course
Yeah.
modality.
Yeah.
It's more than a workshop, a lot more. Then I did the second year somatic sex educators And from there, I did a whole bunch of different bodywork modalities. So I did some training in trigger point therapy. I did some training in urogenital bodywork, which is an offshoot of osteo.
Wow.
I didn't do an osteo degree. That was workshops. That was a series of workshops. And then I did craniosacral therapy, which I just found
wonderful.
amazing. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I went over to the US and studied with Ellen Heed, the stream training. And then I came back, and it wasn't long after that I suppose it was a few years after that lockdowns happened. And then I got really into doing trauma. So I really into doing trauma work. Like I'd been little bits of it up until then, but I was like, I want to get trained in how to process trauma. At that point, I was working on how to minimize trauma, how to work with it in the room. I was trauma informed. I did a bunch of workshops and courses on trauma at that point. But then I wanted to move into processing. So then I did the EMDR training. I did inner child work, which is incredible. Ego state therapy. That sort of brings us up close to present day, and then I just blend all these things together.
Yeah, it's amazing. Such a rich toolkit. Yeah.
I'm working with a person in front of me, what works for them, rather than putting a formula onto them.
Yeah.
And like that's how we were trained in sexological bodywork, is we just go where the client, their mind and their body is taking us, and working with the consent of the mind and the body.
Yeah.
That's just such a big thing, because the body and the mind can have different.
They do. Yeah. And cultivating capacity for them to be in alignment is a skill in and of its own, So
Totally.
thank you so much for sharing. Like, it's such a rich and diverse background you have, and it demonstrates the value and the depth of support that people are receiving when they come to you. You obviously do one-on-one client work. Do you do online programs? Do you do in-person workshops in Melbourne? Like, are those other offerings too, just so people know?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one here in Tarneet in the western suburbs. This is my room behind me.
Nice.
People can learn. I've got a little cuddle corner as well. Oh, I forgot to mention two-way touch. I'm one of the facilitators of the two-way touch training, and that's something I offer in my sessions as well. So with sexological bodywork, it's one-way touch. And the way that I do two-way touch is I do one-way touch genitals on my clients, and then two-way touch other parts of the body on me. So I don't do two-way touch on my genitals at the moment. That's not an area that I focus on. But one of the things I'd love to do, I'm going to take the camera if people are looking on the camera, is going to my little cuddle corner over there. It used to be a closet. And I put cushions and rugs in there, and I just take people in there sometimes if that feels right for them, and do some lovely cuddling.
Like a cocoon.
Nice and comfy, and some somatic practices as well. So we'll be like, notice your body, notice the connection you're making with the ground. If they find certain types of touch, a cuddle or a touch on their body, a little bit challenging, we'll do some processing around that.
Yeah. Wonderful. Amazing. You have two incredible workshops on the FEAST 2025 program. I'd love to talk about them for a moment. The first one is lap trance, which I feel like is just going to be such a fun and actually deeply like valuable space. And then the second one is also equally potent, genital show and tell, which might kind of like freak some people out, but having done this practice myself, I know the value and the liberation and the kind of sense of affirmation and feeling seen that it can offer. Can you give us a little dose of like your intentions of what people might come away with, or what you're wanting to give them in those two spaces?
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm so excited. The lap trance one. Now, this is a workshop that I created about 10 years ago. And there's little pieces of the two-way touch in there, because it is two-way. It's not one way, it's two-way. And it's a sort of blending of all the different modalities I use, plus lap dancing ways of being. But it's different to a dance, as in we're not really dancing. We've usually got our eyes closed when we're doing it, and it's all about the presence. The only thing that really makes it lap dancey is the positions that people are in.
Yeah, cool.
So one of them's sitting there with their legs open. That's important to have their legs open. And the other person is standing in front. And the really cool thing about this is the person that is standing in front guides where the touch goes with their movement of their body. So at the start, where we establish boundaries, where we're touching, where we're not touching, it's all touch just with hands rather than touch with mouth or genitals. And we're moving in and out of the touch according to the person that's standing. And then there's an opportunity to swap.
Yeah, awesome.
It's really important to establish that this is not about voyeurism and exhibitionism. This is not about performance. This is not about a woman performing for the male gaze. This is for all genders, and it's about the connection. It's about the boundaries and consent and giving and receiving touch.
I love that. And yeah, I know in my personal relationship, like being able to play in these ways has given me so much, given us so much. So it's great you're bringing this piece. Tell us about the other one.
The other one, the genital show and tell, I've decided to change its name to Loving Your Genitals.
I love it.
That kind of sits with me a little bit.
Yeah, nice.
We might be showing and telling as well, but we're also loving them. And it plays into that genital black hole that we were talking about before. So what I'm noticing in my sessions is the more people understand about their genitals, the more that they can understand the anatomy, the physiology, the ways in which we're very similar to other people, no matter what gender you were assigned at birth, no matter what sex. We've all got the same tissues, they're just rearranged in a different order. So coming back to that, we all started out the same. We've got the same tissues, just reorganized, working on the understanding and the reconnecting with our genitals from our heart. So bringing some heart space into it as well as the genitals. And telling the stories of our genitals, sharing, and if we feel called to and if we feel comfortable with it, maybe even showing our genitals. But again, feeling into consent. Yeah, we might not want to go there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And, you know, high revolution and transformational possibility, and to be stepped in at a rate that each person feels comfortable with, which is, you know, so many of the foundations of FEAST. So I love that there's this opportunity to stretch ourselves, and also that there's alternatives, you know, in that space. Amazing. I feel like this dovetails perfectly into my second last question for you, which is, what do you think the biggest obstacle is for people stepping into sexuality work, and how do you personally support them to overcome that or meet their edge in that space?
Oh, the biggest obstacle. That's a good question.
And maybe, if, you know, maybe not the biggest, but maybe the most common that you see in your work, perhaps.
Well, I have seen quite a few people, they're frightened. They're just really, especially with the work that I do, with the trauma work, it's a fear. Like they're scared to come out. They're scared to put themselves out there. And often it can be really good for people who, like, say they might want to do an in-person session with me, doing an online session first, or doing a series of online sessions, like doing some EMDR or some EFT tapping. I do a little bit of that one, that funny one. Some people love it, some people hate it. I love it. Doing a little bit of embodied counseling, sort of getting their confidence up, and then when they walk through the door, they're not meeting a stranger. So that's a good one to do.
I feel like that's something that's popped up. You know, fear is almost always one of the elements that has come up in these conversations around the obstacles, and I think this not the same content of the answer, but a similar frame or quality around like the stepping stones, the touch points where people can ease in, you know, almost like getting into a really hot bath or a really cold bath. It's like at the pace that works for you. And I think, you know, one of the things we've been saying is like, if you can get to FEAST, just get yourself through the door, and then you can move at whatever rate that feels comfortable, you know. And so it's great to hear that affirmation of the way that you manage that as well in your space.
Totally. Like often the work is just getting through the door, making the booking, getting there, and it's like, right, I'm here.
We're gonna collapse for a moment. I can do whatever I need. Have a glass of water. It doesn't matter. Wonderful. I would love, my final invitation for you is to finish the sentence, I'm going to FEAST 2025 because, and I would love you to say those words as well, and then just share whatever comes up for you.
I'm going to FEAST 2025 because I want to give and receive and share and just be in the beautiful, lovely, somatic sexuality of the community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lorraine. It's been awesome chatting with you today and offering your wisdom, getting to know you a bit better. I'm going to drop links to your website and your socials in the show notes so people can find your work if they want to. And if folks are interested in finding out more about Lorraine's workshops or her work, then please touch base on our website and stuff. We are so excited to collaborate with you and have you bringing your heart, your incredible offerings and creativity to this space. So thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you, Jordan. It's been so lovely talking with you. You put me at ease and made me feel so comfortable. Sometimes these things make me nervous, but you're amazing.
Wonderful. Thanks heaps.